Hi, and welcome to Monday's review of Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach. I'm on a live. We're on chapter 5, which she says is coming home to the body and mindfulness in the body. Really, this whole chapter is about embodiment, which is a great topic if you've not explored it before, and something to really be aware of. Basically, what she talks about is how really when we're doing personal growth, and in this case, working towards radical acceptance, that we need to be aware that we hold a lot in our bodies and that there is this connection between the mind and the body. And she does some really nice kind of comparisons to bring this to light. At first, she talks about how you can actually experience the embodiment of feelings in your own body. And this is cool because it's a way that you can work with kids. So I talk about this sometimes with my coaching clients, and B, it is a way to be aware within yourself that you might be starting to become more aware of reactions that are coming up or bubbling up. For example, she talks about 3 of the main emotions that you may experience. In anger, she talks about oftentimes when you're experiencing anger, the embodiment of anger feels like tightness. Sometimes you feel chest pressure, like a building pressure. With kids, we talk about we feel like a volcano that's about to explode. It's oftentimes pressure and tightness that you feel when you're embodying your anger. And then she talks about fear. Fear is oftentimes felt with stomach stuff. So in kids, if you have a kid who has a lot of complaints about nausea or stomach upset, oftentimes that is fear and anxiety, right? Because anxiety is a type of fear that's coming up over and over again. And you know that as knots in your stomach or butterflies in your stomach. Also constriction, like squeezing of the chest or throat. You can feel that, and usually that is an embodiment of fear. And then she talks about shame. Shame, embodiment of shame, sometimes feels like your face is flush or even burning. Sometimes you slump your shoulders or you feel like you want to shrink back. Those are all types of embodiment of shame or guilt. And this is really, I know I'm talking about radical acceptance in yourself, but because I work with parents so much, I want to say that you can see this in kids very clearly. And oftentimes, if you're looking within your family and they're having, behavioral issues, sometimes I will say just become observant of, what is happening within their own bodies or what their own complaints are, or ask them, how are they feeling? How is their body feeling? And sometimes you can really pinpoint the emotions that are going on that they're struggling with based on the sensations in the body. She goes on to say that those bodily sensations really are how we directly experience life, right? And you can, if you stay with the feelings, they do shift. And she set the groundwork, right, in these previous chapters with being aware, being present, stopping reactivity, and really observing, right? Last time when we talk about sacred pause, I hope you all did the sacred pause. Sacred pause allows for you then to experience what is happening without reacting and with paying attention and bringing that awareness, right, to what is happening. And you can really feel that when you're doing embodiment work. So this chapter has a lot of stories, so I'm not going to go into all the different stories about her own experience with embodiment. She talks about being frustrated with her son. She talks about some heavy stuff with clients and abuse. I'm not going to go into all of that. If you're reading along, you know it already, and if not, and you want some more insight, you can pick up the copy, or Scribed has it on. I think they have both audio and Kindle or ebook versions. So basically, she goes on to really pinpoint that loving is the priority, right? Connecting again with what is going on with our bodies, experiencing them, but also remembering that our goal is to be open and connected and loving, right? And that is really the goal of all of this work in radical acceptance. She has a great quote by Thoreau, which I will say because I do love Thoreau. He's one of my favorites. And his quote was, "Dwell as near as possible to the channel in which your life flows." I doubly love this because I'm reading a book called How Yoga Works. And it talks about these channels. It is a beautiful story, a fictional story, but illustrates kind of the principles of yoga. And you could use that quote for that as well. So if you're into yoga and not Buddhism, you will see the connection there. It's really very beautiful. She also says that the roots of reactivity are truly revealed by exploring the embodiment, right? The grip of your stories and sensations are lessened if you can channel, right? Become aware of how you're carrying those. Because oftentimes when we're stuck in a story, and she talks about those stories, remember, from the beginning chapters, that story of how we talk to ourselves, that story of I'm the klutz, I'm an idiot, whatever it is. Oftentimes we don't even realize we're doing that to ourselves. We've been doing it for so long that we really have a hard time of knowing that that's what's going on. We get so entranced in that. And really, when we can get inside our bodies and feel the sensations and then take a minute and not react to them, we really lessen the ability of those stories to be perpetuated in our lives. This is a truly beautiful chapter. She says, embodied presence awakens us from the trance, which is totally her. But basically, that if we can get inside and be in touch, right, within the body, we can be aware and present with what's really going on and not get stuck in the reactivity of the trance, right? Those negative things that are going on. She also says we have to free ourselves on the ground level to what perpetuates our suffering. I think those are very clear. And basically, we are stopping the reactivity or the resistance to those feelings. Really, when we do embodiment work, we become aware and present and open. So sometimes, when she's telling the story about her son, the beautiful part of that is she's stopping herself from her normal reactions. And it doesn't mean that she's not feeling the things, but she just becomes aware of what is really going on within her, like the different fears that are coming up, the different guilt that is coming up. And instead of reacting to it, she's just sitting with it and letting it kind of wash over her and realizing with a different lens, as Dr. Green often says, and I love him, and he talks about raising human beings or the explosive child. He talks about changing that lens of how you're seeing other people and your reaction with them. And really that happens when you use that awareness. All right, I'm turning pages to look at my notes. Don't worry, I don't have a lot of notes, so this won't be a super long one. She does talk about the overlay of thoughts and the mental world. This I found really intriguing because I'm really into like neuroscience and psychology and kind of like those roots of what's in the mind. And she really talks about how we get stuck in the mind and we ignore the body. And there are a couple of books that talk about embodiment that are on my to read list. So hopefully I will get to those soon. But how oftentimes people get overwhelmed with the thoughts in their head and they lose like so much by just going through life by being like overwhelmed with thoughts and this and this, and the thoughts are just running and running and running. And we end up in these weird, oftentimes repetitive places. She wants to remind us that breath is actually the natural pathway to get from the mind back into your body. And if you do any meditation or mindfulness meditation, you will know it always starts with breath, because it's a way that we can get out of our mind and back into our body and reconnect those two things. She talks about how you really, once you get into embodiment work, which really is mindfulness and meditation, you will start to notice the energy within your body. You can relax tightness. It's really the basis and something that I hold very true. It's one of my top 3 things. If you're on my Best Self, Best Health, either client list, Facebook page, or web page, it's one of my top 3 things that can change your life is using mindfulness. She talks about how there are only 3 states that our body really and mind really pay attention to, and that's we code things as either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And when things are pleasant, our mind tries to hold on to them, right? We try to not let them go. When they're unpleasant and coded as unpleasant by our mind, we try to avoid them. And we all have mechanisms for avoiding things, disengaging. And then neutral, we try to kind of stop whatever we're doing if it's neutral. Our mind is like, this isn't important either to avoid or to hold on to, so let's look elsewhere for something else. And when you practice mindfulness, you become very aware of those 3 different things and how they're playing out both in your mind and in your body. She also talks about embodiment of pain. There are some great resources about trauma and the embodiment of trauma, how childhood trauma and abuse, how PTSD can really be trapped within your body, and you can experience real pain, fear, or dissociation, and how important it is to experience acceptance and sitting with and staying with the bodily sensations that come around with that, because ultimately the power that we all have individually is realizing that things shift. Thoughts and bodily sensations are types of energy that will pass. It is not a continually experienced thing. It's really beautiful for those of us who have experienced childbirth. It's kind of that same thing where people have told you you will have times of contractions and pain, and they will pass if you stay within them, right? And so it's also really empowering to be aware of these things. The end of this, she has a quote from a Zen master, which I really, really loved. It was, "As we let life live through us, we experience the boundless openness of our true nature." Think about that one. It's just really beautiful quote. She ends this, again, your challenge for this week, with some guided meditations. Basically, she does a basic body scan meditation, which if you're on Headspace or Calm or even Insight Timer, I'm sure there are basic meditations or beginning meditations that include a body scan. I will put hers in the comments because it's her book. She also does a guided meditation for pain, and I will put that in the comments below. And then she also she doesn't say this, but I would challenge you that in times this week where you find yourself in an intense situation, either being overwhelmed by thoughts or having the bubbling up of reactions, right, from your own feelings, to bring that sacred pause and awareness and then really observe how you're experiencing it in the body. Really take a moment, right? When you feel that anger, write down where you feel that anger or frustration or shame or guilt. Any of those big sensations that you literally catch yourself in the moment. Use the tools from the previous one of the sacred pause. And last week we were saying do a sacred pause, right, with a daily activity because it allows you to learn how to use the sacred pause. Now I'm asking you something a little bit harder. It's to catch yourself within an emotion and take the pause and observe how you're embodying that feeling. I will post below. My phone is wigging out, so it's a good time. I'll post below the guided meditations. If you have comments or questions, please put them below or message me, and I will be back next week with chapter 6. Until then, I hope you enjoy this beautiful fall week as we get into this season of gratefulness and thankfulness, which is one of my favorites. So I will see you guys next week.